Wow. That was a fantastic panel, and I want to thank all of you for what you've done. You're sharing, I think there's probably not a dry eye in the house, really, because it's really been wonderful to start with your really sharing of experiences, your strength, what you recognize in the health system as gaps and as good things. So the next, we have enough time now where it's your turn to ask questions and have a dialogue with this fantastic panel. And if you would like to speak, raise your hand, then I'll call on you, and then you have a microphone there you can use, and I want you to give your name and affiliation before you answer the question. So does anyone have a question for this panel? Yes. Can you, pick a microphone. Wait, turn it on.
On? Okay, my name is Heather Risser, and I'm wondering, are there some words or terms for things like mental health or behavioral health that as a parent who might have been concerned about stigma would have resonated more positively with the parents that we could, maybe adopt internally?
Okay, great question. Yeah, what should the sign on the floor say? Great.
I'm happy to answer. I'm Breck Gamble. To be honest, I think calling it what it is has actually been the most empowering. It wasn't until I got invited to a conference before this one that was talking about mental health, and I think it was part of something else, and then they were going to do a segment about mental health, and someone said, "You do a good job with mental health in your family. Would you share?" And I was like, oh, I really? I hadn't, even though everyone in my family's in therapy except for my 3-year-old, and even though we that's a very big thing, I just didn't know that it was really that name. I just thought it was coping. I thought it was surviving. I thought it was going to therapy. I didn't really, and so to be honest, I think for me, it was most empowering to have a name for it. This is just caring for my mental health. And it's scary, but I think the more it gets used, the more embraced it can be. So that would be my suggestion, is actually calling it what it is.
Linda, yeah.
I would add to that, behavioral health works for me because I think it's a little more expansive. And honestly, the terminology is important because words matter, but it's the picture that comes to folks' mind with the terminology that I think we really have got to work on. So behavioral health is probably a term that it's the term that I use clinically and personally. But again, it's the image that is more concerning.
I definitely agree with Linda. I think that is a more expansive term and a more accepted term. We still deal with stigma. But the other thing I would say is ask the parents you're working with. Ask the families you're working with. Some may be very comfortable with calling it what it is. I am, but others like to term it in, coping skills or in emotional issues. They struggle with, some special needs at school. It all depends, but ask.
Yeah. Rebecca or Robin, do you have any thoughts about this?
I still see support as needed, and when people ask me, I just say, I see my therapist. It's the person there to help me. I don't have a negative image of therapists. I actually look at it more as a prestigious image. I think I live in New York City and everybody has a therapist, right? I think what the difference is I don't attach a stigma to it myself. I say it with confidence, and I think people understand that when it projects, and so it doesn't receive the negative. I think it can take a while for parents to reach that point in their therapies or in whatever services they're receiving, and maybe the confidence will come as they find the benefit of it.
I would agree. It's taken me a while, like I said, to get there. So I like the term behavioral therapist. Again, I still have that perception. I think mental, I think something is wrong. So I guess behavioral would work better for me. So.
Okay, great. Yes, go ahead. And say your name and who you're associated with, or, yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Hoagwood at New York University. This was fantastic. I love starting with this. Wonderful, all of you. Thank you. I strongly believe that the work you're doing to professionalize the role of parents and parent partners is crucial. And our work in New York has been designed to help support that. But one of the things we sometimes hear from parents is that insofar as they become parent professionals, they are concerned that that may undermine their ability to advocate for the parent voice. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts about how you sort of navigate those tensions. That is, promoting parents as professional partners and making sure that the workforce enables advancement and career advancement, but the potential for that to undermine the ability of parents to speak independently of whatever workplace they are associated with. So how do you think about that?
Maybe Linda and Millie with your organizations could say something about your experiences there. Yeah.
Well, Linda and Millie could probably talk all day about this, but we won't do that right now. It's a great question, Kimberly. Here's my thinking about that. First of all, if you're in the healthcare workforce, you should be an advocate. Everyone should be an advocate. That should not be a separate thing. So that's the first thing I would hope for. Secondly, while parents as peers are advocating, they're also working as support, which is a very different thing. And I think it's very important as we have this workforce emerging that we are building this into those job descriptions. Even to that level, we need to be able to say, this person will be working on behalf of families. I think that is the first step. I think there's going to be the need for some cultural training within the workforce, but I don't believe it to be an insurmountable object.
I also think that not only do you have to build it into the job descriptions, which is critical. That's what people get, graded on, performance evaluations, that sort of thing. Build it in, but also understand that parent peer support has as one of its core competencies advocacy. And that's at the individual level and at the system level. And so it should be expected that whatever position they have, that there is a piece of that. Now, there is training that needs to go around that, about being assertive and not aggressive, choosing your battles, how you can make system change, be very solution focused. Another component to that on the parent peer support side is peer supervision is critical. They need to have supervision with someone who helps them maintain their identity as a parent, who helps them when something that they're working through or a family they're working with triggers something about their own journey, to help them frame those advocacy opportunities in a way that is solution focused.
Okay, great. Other questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Chris Balanci from Boston at Tufts Medical Center. I really appreciate your starting us off this morning. I think it really grounds the conversation for the next 2 days. And my question is about when your young folks are transitioning into adulthood and that magical number 18 happens. And I feel like my hands are often tied in my ability to actively engage with you when your young person has the right around confidentiality with certain parameters that I can violate that. How, from a parent's perspective, do you want us working with you collaboratively going forward? Because I certainly still see the need. It's not like magically they've got the keys to adulthood at 18. And yet I also feel stymied by the process. And I know there's some legislation being proposed and maybe even being heard tonight in Congress. But how would you want us to continue to collaborate with you while being respectful of the autonomy of your children?
I'll start this. I know a couple of us have kiddos at this age. Since Dylan may be the oldest, I'll go first. We started this very early. Dylan and I and his father talked early on about him becoming 18 and what that meant. And First of all, he was shocked. I mean, kids don't realize that at 18, suddenly they're just sort of cut off from their parents legalistically. So we worked through it with all of his healthcare professionals. He signed all the forms so that I can be contacted. He will, while sitting in a doctor's office, text me or put me on FaceTime. Now that is changing. Dylan's now engaged and is marrying a wonderful young woman who is taking my place, which is the way it should be. But we worked that out very early. We had those discussions probably starting when he was about 15 or 16 about what we were coming towards. And through that, we have continued to have great family relationships with his professionals.
Hello? Okay. My sons are, just 19, and it was kind of a shock for me when I went in, and I'm like, what do you mean they have to sign for me, to be in the room? I'm still paying the, the insurance. But we started young with them learning how to speak up for themselves. So, if 14, 15, 16, they answered the questions for the doctors while I was in the room just to kind of back them up. And even now, I'm still at the appointments, for the most part, but they are the ones that are interacting with the doctors. And I think that helps transition them so that as they get older, they'll be confident, they'll know how to speak with the doctors. But I think it's important for parents to know that, the magic age is 18 when they have to consent, or, for you to, at least I think it is 18, that's when I remember they had to consent for me to be in the room and talk with the doctors, so. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Any other comments? I think you had a question, yeah. And then I'll go to you.
Oh, I was just going to make one comment about that. On the flip side, I think that we need to, as part of the workforce, as providers, we need to help parents understand their evolving role. That can be very difficult. As my daughter's, I guess, the youngest of the transitioning youth. And I've been lucky in that, when you work in a family-run organization, it kind of is everybody in. So she was part of different activities that we did. She is very knowledgeable about how parents stay involved with their kids who are experiencing some emotional or behavioral issues. But I think that knowing more about what my role is as she gets older and how that changes, and knowing what your rights are, when they can start signing for themselves, when they can say, no, I don't want you to be a part of this. No, I'm not going to take my medication anymore because I have a right not to do that. It's important that just as the youth are getting that information, that the families get that as well.
Okay, go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Lauren Ramos from the Federal Maternal and Child Health Bureau. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. My question is more about the theme of the workshop, so really thinking about training the future workforce. Can you reflect a little bit on what you wish your providers were trained in? So some of us in the room are in a position to really think about changing workforce development and training programs, and so really I'm interested in your perspectives on what can we do to make sure the health workforce is really responsive to families' needs.
Get my thing on fast enough. Here we go. I'm like, oh my gosh, let me tell you all my thoughts. Gosh, a couple of different quick things that were coming through. I mean, one is that the parent is not the problem. I mean, even in the medical community, I deal with that. I had to go toe-to-toe with a doctor one time because my son was having a lot of pain, and he was just like, you need to be the mother. And I was so shocked by the comment, I didn't have a way, to think back that I wanted to say, exactly, that's why I want to make sure you do your job. But, I think that's the mindset sometimes that the message that I can get is that, you're just the mother, or you're the problem, you're in the way, let me do my job with your child. And that's really frustrating because it's not a partnership. And so that's one of the first things I would love to change cultural-wise. I think the other thing is along the same vein is giving parents more training. We don't have access a lot of times to, where do you go to find this information? Where do I go to find people who can help me? It's very hard to do that. So in some way, parents need to be brought in on some aspect of their own sense of training. And then the other thing is, I think that there's a tendency, at least in my experience, is there's a little bit of passing the buck. Like, do I go to my pediatrician? Do I go to the cystic fibrosis doctor? Do I go to the social worker in our cystic fibrosis clinic? Do I go to the therapist who's never heard of cystic fibrosis? Like, how do I do that? And I think that would be my biggest wish, is that we somehow can help these different people that are here for us to be able to understand and know more about each other. I mean, what we're finding with the cystic fibrosis community, at least, is that there's a real push on assessing families and whether or not they have depression and anxiety, but there's no resources. We don't really have anywhere to send anyone yet. So we're figuring it out. The foundation is helping us do that, but that's a huge problem.
What the rest of you want to say? I know you did address this is a great opportunity. If you could put one thing there that we could have for the workshop recommendations, it would be great. Does anybody else want to talk? Yeah.
I could spend all day talking about this. This is my passion. I think implementing from the university, when people first start thinking about, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a social worker, I want to be a therapist, I want to be a doctor, instituting some sort of curriculum, courses that really focus on family-driven care, that provide opportunities to hear from the other side of the table. Have parents come and present, have youth come and present. I think starting there is the best way to train up the new and upcoming workforce. But for now, I think it is simply having that handoff. It's called system of care, in case anybody's heard of that, where you build a collaborative and a cooperative system among providers that partners with families. So I think having mechanisms and looking for collaborations where you are able to say, that's not really what I'm good at, but I do know that this person over here is, and I'm not just going to give you a number, I'm going to call. I'm going to go with you. Again, and I know I harp on parent-peer support, but I've seen the amazing things it can do. Having someone who's been there and done that to walk through that with a parent, to teach them how to be the best care manager for their child, they are the only constant. Whether it's school systems, whether it's providers, whether it's, the pediatrician or the probation officer, as well as the therapist and the nurse practitioner that you see for meds, they're the one constant that goes from each provider to the other. And so helping them learn how to be a care manager, I think, also is critical.
Okay, great. Laurel, do you want to say something?
I just wanted
Then
to
I'll come to you.
This whole 2 days is going to be up on the NAM website in 2 weeks. So if you guys are okay with it, these are stories you could take back to your training programs while you're looking for families locally. We could share these stories, which will be online, and use that as a tool.
Yes. Question.
Hi, I'm Joyce Sebian with Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, one of the federal agencies. And I wanted to ask if you would speak to the idea of institutionalization around family voice. We've just published across the federal agencies a guide for youth engagement and youth voice in federal agencies, and so I want to let folks know about that. But also, it seems to me that there's the really good capacity that's developing in many states and communities that is taking it from just this practitioner working nicely or collaboratively with a parent, but also embedding that change of how we do business in an institution or bringing family voice to state and institutional policy work. Does that make sense?
It does. I think that if you have family involvement from every level, if you have parents that sit on your board, if you have parents who teach courses, if you have parents who are providers, the difference in, obviously I work with family-run organizations. If you're looking for expertise in those areas, they are the ones to go to. They know your state, they know the parents, they know the networks, they know the systems. But if you can, well, with family-run organizations, the difference is that we self-identify within our organization. And so, we're able to say, yes, I struggle with that with my child. In other places they can't. So it's not just infusing parent voice, but it's also having policies and procedures that normalize being a parent of a child with emotional behavioral disorder. It's having a culture of support that's built within your institution. And it's having processes that emphasize and encourage connections. That's kind of off the top of my head. Sure.
I would just add to that. We talk a lot about family voice and youth voice as if it's some separate thing. And it really isn't. It should be a part of each and every one of us who are a parent or who have parents. And all of us fall into one of those two categories. Voice is very important in everything, and particularly as we are thinking in terms of policies and procedures. One of the places workforce-wise that we're going to have to deal with this is the issue that for each of us sitting here today, you've heard us speak about situations when our child was in crisis, one type of crisis or another. And with children with behavioral health challenges, these crises are extremely unpredictable, as they are with many physical health challenges. So we're going to have to be accommodating. We're going to have to be able to put into policies and procedures how we are going to support those parents. When I suddenly get a call and they say, your son's just been arrested, we think you probably want to get down to the courthouse right now. There needs to be a way for me to do that without blame, embarrassment. I need to have everyone's support, just like if I had gotten a call, your son just broke his leg and you need to get to the hospital. So I think it's the episodic nature of some of the crises that we face that some parents may not experience or may not experience as often. These things tend to be, unfortunately, a part of the rhythm and routine of our lives.
Good. We're going to have to get, so after hearing this incredible, powerful testimony for why parent partnerships are involved, I think the rest of the workshop is really about how do you make that happen? How do you make that happen in training and education? What kinds of structures need to be in place in hospitals, healthcare delivery systems to assure this happens? So I just want to, again, thank this fantastic panel for sharing with us today all of your experiences.